Let's do this.
I like that. That's like the Riley Shuffle.
Oh, it's nice.
Yeah.
People are like, who's that guy? Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 44 of Bigfoot Collectors Club, the show where amazing guests share their personal paranormal histories and we tell tales of high strangeness.
There's nothing funny about that.
I'm your host, Michael McMillan. With me always is your other host,
Bryce Johnson.
And our trusty producer,
Riley Breck.
And we were just talking before the show sort of launched into this recording session, like a lackluster SpaceX flight. We had a little trouble getting started. This is guys, we're on episode 44, and I think this is officially the longest relationship I've ever been in. We're coming up on a year.
That's amazing, man. Well, I'm gonna get you a nice anniversary ring. What is the first year? You ever go like, I've been married 15 years, and you always check the internet like 3rd year anniversary, and it's like twine. And
you go like,
first paper,
right, couple are
right,
paper.
oh,
great,
right, yeah, there you go. So something like that, but we'll have to figure what that is.
You just heard his voice, and he'll have many more answers for us today.
I spoke too soon.
No, please, you can't. I just want to give you an introduction and get you in here.
Jump the gun a little bit.
Today, better than being behind the gun, like I've been from the moment I woke up this morning. With us today is an actor that I occasionally cross paths with on the set of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and he's also starring in a brand new show on Hulu called The Body.
Nice.
Yeah, sounds sexy.
Thank you.
Everyone, please give a warm welcome to David Hull.
Yeah, everybody. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome.
Welcome to our sad little club.
No, this is sweet, man. What are you talking
We're a
about?
sweet little club.
David was one of the few cast members that was giving me a really hard time for not bringing him on the show
Yeah,
yet.
I just thought it was a little bit insulting considering that I have absolutely no reason to be a guest on this podcast. I have no stories of the paranormal. I have no expertise of any kind.
We'll see.
I got shit the most from you and Vela.
Yeah, it was mostly a bit. I didn't think in a million years you'd actually ask me to do this, but here I am.
And then Vela's like, I don't have any stories. I was like, God damn it. I've always wanted to have more cast members on. I was kind of saving it for the return.
Yeah, you were Gabrielle Ruiz before you got to me. Jeez.
Well,
her story was the
heat.
funk. Holy cow.
Dude, everyone except I think she and Donna Lynn have it covered in the cast.
She basically,
and with Pete's wife having
Of
her
course.
area of expertise.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
you guys really have hit the trifecta of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend cast members.
totally.
Without Pete and Susie, we would have never met Adela Levine,
Yeah,
our now resident BCC medium psychic.
I know. I want to talk to her.
We're going to
about
get back
stuff.
on the show very soon.
We need to.
It's that spooky time of year. We need to.
I think Susie
bring her
still
back.
sees her pretty regularly.
I think she does. Oh yeah, no, and I think on the regs.
Yeah.
Like,
Susie's treating me from afar. She's healing me.
Oh.
I have a disease called Meniere's disease.
what is this?
It's a very rare inner ear disease that caused me to lose 50% of my hearing in my left ear, and then creates these kind of manic vertigo spirals for hours at a time.
What?
Oh no.
And so she did some healing in person on me, and then I ran into her last week, and she told me, or she asked me if I'd been having any spirals. I was like, it's crazy. I actually haven't, and it's because she's been healing me from afar.
Wow.
And I have to say, I felt the dawning, the little twinge of it coming on, and then it disappears right away.
And you said you
That's
had
incredible.
nothing to share with the club
there
today.
you go.
Yeah, I guess that is relevant.
Well-
Wow, thank God I'm here.
Yeah. Wait. So I'm so sorry to hear that you suffer from this condition.
Oh,
that
that's
sounds
all
like
right.
it sucks.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's not great.
How is your hearing now? I mean, not now, but I mean in general.
I gotta say, I have noticed no actual change in what I can hear, but apparently at certain frequencies, I mean, when they do all the sort of really high tech sound testing or a hearing test, I think I can hear fine. I hear like I always thought I could, but apparently at certain frequencies, I have extremely low sensitivity.
So you're like an anti-dog.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't hear.
No,
those
yeah, super
high-pitched.
high and super low. I guess I have really poor
Oh,
hearing,
wow.
and the middle range, or maybe it's the other way. I think I have high and low, and I don't have the middle range.
Oh.
the speaking
Oh, wow.
range.
That's very
Just in my left, and my right's always been like 30% deaf.
really.
Yeah,
I'm so surprised to hear this.
from my childhood.
What caused that? If
I don't know.
You know.
It's just always been like, I remember sitting in the hearing test in grade school. Did you have to do those?
Oh,
when you
yeah.
were-
Yeah.
And they set you up and they say to raise whichever hand you hear the beep, in whichever corresponding ear you hear the beep. And I was sitting down and I raised my hand and she was like, "We haven't started yet." It's when you hear the beep that you raise your hand. I was like, "Right, yep." I had totally just imagined a beep because I was so nervous
Of
about
course.
hearing it. So I guess I
Turns out you've just been totally misdiagnosed because of raising your hand.
You just have general anxiety disorder like the rest of us.
Right.
Yeah, right. You're just freaking out about
We all
not
got
being
that.
included.
And is that how you got the nickname David No Beeps? Hall?
No beeps hall. Everyone's calling me that. God, thought I'd escaped it. Here we
Sorry
are.
to bring it back. Your mom wrote us an email.
Wow.
Speaking of emails,
Yes.
if I may, I would like to read a couple emails from our listener files.
What a nice idea.
It's a great idea, Mike.
Thank you, David. We do the occasional listener files episodes, and we just want to make sure that you guys get to enjoy them a little bit more frequently because sometimes they're 6 to 7 weeks apart.
Well, and it really brings the fans into the show as part of the show because we love hearing and collecting paranormal stories, whatever they may be.
Exactly. And this might be a veiled advertisement for our new phone number that you can call.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We've got a Bigfoot Collectors Club paranormal hotline.
And that number is 310-597-4803. Leave us a voicemail.
All right, so this one is from Jared.
Oh, wait a moment.
Oh,
Let's cue a little music here.
sure.
Oh my goodness.
Bigfoot Collectors Club Listener Files. All right.
All right.
Wow.
There we go.
There we go.
I really enjoyed that. Here we go. Hi, guys. I'm Jared. I was born and raised in Roswell, New Mexico. But there you go. We could stop right there.
Yep.
That's
You're
all I needed to
weird.
hear.
Yeah, that's all you need. I never had any experience of the paranormal until I moved to Georgia, where my wife is from. Before I moved out there, she warned me about how she thinks she's haunted. This was back in 2009. Since then, we have lived in 4 different houses and have experienced the same thing, from items being moved in the house to hearing our voices being mimicked. That would suck. I do have an episode where I believe I was abducted. So, it begins about a year and a half ago between 12 and 2 in the morning. My wife was asleep next to me and I was watching TV. All of a sudden, I got this heaviness in my chest and I couldn't move or talk. I tried waking her up but couldn't. I then began to hear a humming sound, and then, in 1 foot, squares my ceiling started flashing like a dance floor, like some squares were on them and some were off. Then it stopped and got quiet. I was unable to move or speak, but then 5 humanoid figures walked through my closed bedroom door and stood around the foot of my bed. They were of average height and build, but the one in the center was only a little bit taller. I don't know if they had a cloaking device on because all they looked like to me was static on a TV screen. I don't remember falling asleep that night and woke up the next day feeling very not me. But yeah, that's what happened to me, Jared.
Jared's
Wow.
possessed, dude.
Yeah. Jared, you need to see somebody about that.
Or as Bryce likes to say,
It's time to get regressed. Dude, I should become a regressionist. I'm sure it's only like 1 or 2 classes.
yeah. I think it's pretty
Get a-
much an online course
Right.
you can take in an
I'm
hour.
sure I could
I think it's just a self-declaration, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh man, I can just imagine the late night TV commercial of Bryce. Go get regress. I'm Bryce. Go get regress Johnson.
That's awesome. Hi, Bryce. I'm calling for get regressed.
You're wearing
Next
like
caller.
That's all you say.
John Lennon sunglasses and a black turtleneck.
It's time to get regressed, love.
Half the fun of this podcast has just now become us imagining what Bryce's other job should be other than being an actor.
I could use some.
I gotta say that is not the costume I was envisioning, but
Oh
I'm
my
glad you said
God.
it. That's very, very.
Well, this is a very interesting story.
I'm hung up on the dance floor.
Yeah,
on
the
on
lights and the
squares.
tiles of the
Michael
ceiling.
Jackson video.
That is such a cool detail.
Yeah, that's kooky.
I wonder if it's something like the energy coming down from these beings was sort of like rippling, like sort of like when you're walking across.
No, it was
you
the
know,
ceiling. It was the ceiling.
Oh, it was the ceiling?
Yeah, like an illuminated tile dance floor.
Oh,
Some going on and
whoa.
off. But there's some very commonalities here in the common abduction story. One is that that heaviness in the chest. Another one is these beings being able to move through walls, windows, doors. Also, the one being a little taller than the other ones. Usually they see that back on the ship. We must sound like crazy people, but hey, but no, like sometimes, in a lot of the abductions when they're on the, if they're on a table or something, they'll see, a few small humanoid figures, and there's always
one taller leader.
That's right.
That seems to be either commanding or instructing other drones or smaller entities on ships, or
not being able to wake up the missus. That's another one.
That's another tried and true. That's like a Whitley Strieber communion level commonality, as you like to say.
Oh my God, I just got that flash of like Christopher Walken waking up. What? Like when he's like going crazy in front of them, he's like playing with them. It was so crazy.
Have you ever seen Communion?
No,
David?
your references are well outside of my ability to comprehend.
We watched it on a movie night. I hadn't seen it before either, but
it's a 1989 film, I believe, starring Christopher Walken, where he plays Whitley Strieber, based on Whitley Strieber's book about his abduction experience up in the Catskill Mountains. And Christopher Walken is like at his peak.
Does he play a man recalling an abduction, or does he play the man encountering?
Both. A little bit of both.
You see him go through the hypno-regression and re-experience it, and it's such a delicious, like late 80s Christopher Walken.
Classic.
Yeah, it's a weird movie, and we expected to not love it as much as we did, and it's perfect for this time of year, guys. If you want to watch a spooky movie.
See, I wasn't imagining an alien encounter when I heard that.
What's your interpretation?
I was imagining something more paranormal, something more from another realm.
Sure,
not quite. But I guess.
Well, it says static people. I've never come across that, like TV static, and that's new. I've never heard or read anything about that.
Why don't you read the next email, Bryce?
Yeah, very interesting. This one is from Matt, and he says, "Hey, Mike and Bryce, huge fan of the podcast. I listen to it every morning on my way back to work. I found you guys through my wife, actually. She knows I'm writing my comic book and saw Michael post about Adventure Van, which is sick, by the way.
Oh, thanks, man. Hey, nice little plug for Adventure Van. A new comic book out now. I did not plan that.
I'm like, wait a minute.
I mean, you picked these.
Did you write this email?
That's not why I picked this one.
Why is that in a different font? And told me I should check out what Michael's been up to. It turns out Mr. McMillan is into some awesome things.
Okay.
And now I'm hooked.
Now we can skip all this.
He's also very handsome and talented.
He smells great.
Smells great. My story. I was probably around 11 or 12. My friend was sleeping over at my house, and as kids tend to do, we stayed up way too late and were cracking each other up. After about the third or fourth time my mom barged in telling us to go to sleep, we wrapped it up and hopped aboard the Dreamland Express. My room was laid out in a way where you could fit another mattress on the floor next to my bed. If I had to guess, we were asleep for a few hours, so maybe around 3 or 4 a.m.
The hour of high strangeness
totally
comes up again and again.
It's that window. I felt a finger, hopefully, poking me in the side.
Where are we headed? Where are we headed?
I know.
Where's your friend?
I know. I waved my hand away and said something like, "Go back to bed," or "Go back to sleep, Dillhole." After a few more pokes to the side, I rolled over in a fit of rage, thinking my friend was messing with me. I turned to see a man entirely made of white noise. I've never experienced anything like this before or since. All I remember happening next was it reaching for me and then nothing. I woke up the next morning as if nothing happened. I casually told my friend about it over breakfast, like, "Hey, bud, did you happen to see a full-grown man made of static walking around last night?" He said no. I thought to myself, great, I'm insane now. After this experience, all of the logic I apply to my daily life tells me, Matt, it was a dream. But you have to wonder, if we live in a multiverse with many, many spatial dimensions, with an infinite amount of possible situations, who's to say I didn't come across an interdimensional poker guy? Me, that's who. Anyway.
That's a great email.
That's my story. It's become kind of an urban legend in my friends group. The Static Man. Keep up the great work, guys. Matt.
Matt.
Doesn't
Wow.
sound unlike how Jared referred to those 5 figures at the foot
Exactly.
of his
Yeah,
bed.
yeah.
And
You
what's
coupled those
crazy-
nicely together.
Yeah, I think Riley
Well,
was the first one to spot these emails.
Yeah, they
and
coupled themselves. They came in one right after the
they
other.
were back to back. They
Yes.
came in like a day apart.
That's wild.
Isn't that
is
insane?
wild.
So that's why I picked those two. And I want
also for the gratuitous
I-
Michael.
Yeah.
that just happened to be in there.
Sure.
I
That's
can't
wild.
control what people put in these emails.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also like that he's an interdimensional poker guy. Like he's not as in a poker player.
Yeah,
he
no,
just likes to walk around.
I
and poke
imagined
people.
cards when he said that. I
Yeah.
got there eventually.
Yeah, I
but
did too. Right. Totally. I was thinking cards. You know, I'm starting to think more about this window, this 3 a.m. window, and how everybody seems to be, in their room or in their bed. God, that doesn't even, now I'm starting to think about all the abductions that take place and people driving in their cars, sometimes even in the daylight hours. But perhaps there's something in that window where you're close to REM sleep, and they, the DMT is releasing, from the pineal gland to kind of
In your
spur
brain.
that from your brain, which, they think is what releases sometimes during, deep hypnagogic sleep, REM sleep or whatever, which might trigger
And released during birth and
and death,
right?
yeah, which is the strange times of, and that's all from Rick Strassman's book, DMT, The Spirit Molecule.
It's a good
But-
book. Have you ever read that?
I
David?
haven't. I was just going to reference Michael Pollan's book on psychedelic drugs because he talks about this constrictor that our brain applies as we grow older that helps us weed out irrelevant information.
Right.
And by
I think
irrelevant-
ours are broken.
They must, yeah.
but just in terms of just seeing a face, and instead of trying to process all the information, you immediately know it's a face. You just have to figure out which face it is. But your brain is getting inundated with information constantly, and you have this constrictor that's helping you weed out the information that's not helpful in just your day-to-day activities.
Right.
But in very young children, in deep REM sleep, and on psychedelic drugs, that releases that constrictor. So you could also just be more open to receiving that information that could be around you all the time.
Absolutely. I mean, and perhaps these dimensions are accessed within us as opposed to outside of us,
Or just being able to see it clearly because you're open to receiving the
Right.
information
Yeah,
that your brain
absolutely.
has chosen.
That's
to
what I
edit.
I tend to lean towards that it's sort of like you're just
tuning a radio
yeah, you're
dial.
opening up the aperture on that lens and seeing letting a little bit more light and a little bit more frequency into your, I guess, third eye is the appropriate
Yeah.
term. And you
What's
know,
the DMT book that you were just talking
it's The Spirit Molecule, I think, by Rick Strassman, and we have it. on
Yeah,
the
he is a
show.
he was an Arizona.
right next to the English Book of Magic.
He
Down
was,
there.
I believe, an Arizona State professor, and it was the first kind of government licensed study on psychedelic drugs. Over the past 50 years, and what he found was, so he was injecting people with doses of DMT that I think he got from rats' brains.
Oh, delicious.
Something like that. But what he found was what kind of blew his mind was the commonalities in the experiencer's usage. What they described going into other dimensions and coming in contact with intelligences there,
Right.
outside of their own ego, outside of their own mind and awareness. Some would relate them to kind of like almost godlike. Some would just relate them to almost alien entities, but but the commonalities ran through all of his patient studies, and he was really kind of baffled and befuddled, and it really kind of drove him to coin the term the spirit molecule. It's a very
I don't know.
interesting
I
read.
wonder what the similarity is between DMT and psilocybin.
Psilocybin. Well, Terrence McKenna will describe the differences between the actual experiences of using psilocybin mushrooms and the experience. And Graham Hancock does a great job too in the book Supernatural of describing the differences of the experience. Apparently, I mean, DMT is like hyperdrive. I mean, when you inject or smoke that, according to these guys, I mean, you are launched into another realm, another world.
And it's for like 8 minutes as opposed to
Oh, I
psilocybin,
see.
which
I
is like
see.
in your
He
It's a
talks
very
so much.
abstract 8 minutes, though.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Would you like to share with the class?
I mean, I think maybe another time. But
Sure.
I very much relate to that book,
Yeah.
and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's
Seems like a
I
little
always-
bit of an unnecessary tease, but when you're ready to tell that story,
no,
take
no,
your time.
it makes you listen. I mean, if we're explorers of the unknown, at some point in my life, I've always felt like I wanted to travel that roadway again at some point. I mean, I've had my experiences with mushrooms and psilocybin, and they were all pretty profound and deep, and I have a vast respect for them, but I've never
Michael Pollan's stances sort of don't really do it until you're 50 or 60, and
Right.
and have this wealth of information as a grown person and not as a developing person.
Yeah.
When it can more resemble recreation and
Yeah.
just tripping balls or whatever.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah. No, you'd have to like respect the experience and go
Right.
into it looking to bring something back, you know what I mean? Instead of just,
It is funny to think about how specifically our egos function, because obviously it's a survival mechanism and you have to put yourself first so that you can eat and procreate and all the things that humans have to do to survive. But because of that, we have these pretty narrow blinders on, and then coupled with the fact that we live in these sort of very specific socialized structures, that to zoom out, to really let your brain zoom out, is terrifying. So I understand people referencing bad trips and things because it can be really daunting.
yeah.
But I think if you can respect it and open your brain to it, it could be very enlightening. Everyone describes it that way.
Well,
Yeah.
and when you add on the social programming that you experience from different cultures,
right.
like drugs are bad,
Right,
which
exactly.
they can be very destructive. Obviously, again, we talk about this stuff. We're not saying run out and do this stuff, but that, and then if you come up from a Christian upbringing and you're
Right.
like you're like, oh my gosh, what if I'm in hell? And what if I'm in? You can easily interpret things in sort of from a cultural point of view that may or may not be helpful.
Right. And death
and
is scary, and
yes.
paranormal activity is evil, and
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Aliens are bad, for the
Right.
most part, that kind of stuff. But
they were bad in Independence Day.
that very bad.
Yeah, totally.
Very bad. E.T.
E.T. very good.
Well, that's why
Very
I'd be so like interested to kind of discover my experience of it, because my ideology has been kind of broken open and kind of like spread across all the realms. So it's like, I'm into like, all kinds of like, spirits and demons, aliens, ghosts, I mean, so who knows where it would land, with
Right.
me.
Right.
It'd be interesting
He
to
was
find
even,
out.
this is such a side item, feel free to cut this, but he was talking about mushrooms specifically and how they function as organisms. And even just hearing him describe them required me to really let go of my previous information, which is it's a single thing that I can eat and it can poison me and that can cause my brain to do things. But it's basically the internet of the forest.
Yeah,
And
that's
the
right.
largest living organisms
largest
on
living
the planet
organism
are
on the
mushrooms.
planet.
It's
That's right.
crazy to me.
It's
And they
insane.
they can communicate between one side and another of just within themselves,
Yeah.
and then they can communicate between other
Fungal
living
clusters
things and trees and grasses that are growing and latched into their root systems.
Yeah,
They
that's
have these, like,
exactly right.
I can't remember, mycelia. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah.
That's this kind of fiber optic-y kind of network. It's like the internet. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's really insane to think that we would, that we as people and as culture, especially Western culture, just sort of ignore all that. Ignore like
Right.
the perfectionism that
Right.
the perfect entity.
No, and we
system
watch
that is
Avatar and we're like,
nature.
ooh, what a fun.
That's
Yeah.
a fun
romp.
concept.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you're like, we could be
based
us.
entirely in reality.
And
Yeah.
instead, we're just decimating
Yep.
nature. It's insane. It's crazy. Well, so
It's a great environmentalist
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
David, you seem very open-minded, and
thank you. Sorry.
even though you don't necessarily have specific stuff, I think we'll be able to dig in a little bit here.
No, I'm desperate for a ghost
Okay,
to haunt
great.
me. I've been begging. I welcome it. If any ghosts are listening, please haunt me.
Okay, well, we're gonna ask you, what is your personal paranormal history?
I'm sure if I were more open to it at a younger age, I could have something to reference. I just didn't. I don't think I've had anything.
Well, where did you grow up, first of all?
Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay, and do you remember any Were there any urban legends or folk tales of things in your town growing up in Cincinnati? Was there like the UFO that's made it into the local paper or
Kind
the
of
haunted
not.
house in the neighborhood?
Really not. No.
Yeah.
I think part of it is that it is a got to be careful here, but there are. It's not a particularly open-minded
Right.
area that I was from, so as we were saying before, that all just kind of sounds evil and scary. So
Right.
it just really wasn't the preoccupation of anyone that I knew, no one in my family. When I got to New York, I lived in New York for a while and I did theater, and those theaters are all legendarily haunted.
Exactly. I mean, that was my.
I've had so many people
question.
tell. There was this show that I did at the Al Hirschfeld Theater, it's called now. I don't remember what it used to be called, but there's apparently a little girl who haunts one of the aisles, and she walks up and down that aisle, and I can't tell you how many people have told me that they've seen her, and they've all described a similar dress, they've all described a similar height, they've all, I think some of them unknowing of other people who have told the same story referencing this thing, but I like walking through the aisles in the dead of night praying that she would come to me,
Yeah.
and she refused me.
Yeah. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, boy. Even ghosts won't haunt me.
But did you, as a child growing up, were you ever infatuated with horror movies, or what scared? Like, what
Again,
scared
my
you?
good Christian upbringing forbade that.
Okay.
But I liked haunted houses. I liked the kind of camp of
Right.
scare tactic and the performance aspect of it. But I just didn't really I never really thought about
What,
it.
if I may ask, what denomination were you raised?
Southern Baptist.
Oh wow.
Mm.
Okay, what's that like?
Uh,
You're speaking to a Presbyterian.
Yeah, sure. So extraordinarily conservative, just much more conservative. But it was like a part gospel church,
Uh-huh.
part good Christian values.
Any
church.
fire and brimstone?
No,
Was
no.
no. Even like
That's good.
the devil's out to get
Oh
you.
well, yeah, all
okay.
of that.
All right.
Yeah, sure. Well, all the kind of standard, the standard apocalypse.
Ooh.
Forthcoming, make sure you're in the right camp before that happens,
Oh.
kind of thing, but not in the sort of theatrical way that I used to depict.
Right. Was
It's
Armageddon?
definitely the through line.
Was your church? Did your church preach that like the second coming was gonna happen in
Imminent.
this lifetime?
Yeah. So yeah.
And how was that? How did that affect your imagination growing up?
Yeah, I guess I had more narrow confines than I think I had realized, because so much of my upbringing was rooted in that, and so much of my value system was rooted in that, and so much of my thought about the world around me was rooted in that, and like a pretty precise good and evil, and a pretty precise, to speak about ego again, like we were talking about, but from our viewpoint as us being the right ones and everyone
Right.
else being wrong.
Right.
Pure ego. But, there was nothing beyond that really entered into my even periphery.
Wow.
Fascinating.
Do you think it was limited because of? Do you feel like it sounds like you're pretty sheltered
Yes. Yeah.
growing up?
Yep.
Like-
yeah, no, we weren't allowed to play secular music.
Wow, I had no idea. You
Even,
were-
this is good, Fantasia. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantasia, yeah.
Yeah.
I
because
got
of Nine on Bald Mountain.
There's sorcery in Fantasia, right?
out of my depth here on this one.
Okay,
but
go on.
Fantasia, it's an animated film
Yes.
starring a wizard played by Mickey Mouse.
Right.
Basically, yes.
And I got it for my, I don't know, 8th birthday or 9th birthday or something from my aunt, and my mom made me take it back on account of the wizardry.
Wow.
Well, it
So-
wasn't that good. It was one of the only films I walked out of when I was young. I was
What?
like, yeah, I was expecting
go.
something else. I was like,
Sort
this
of
is-
non-narrative from
Yeah,
what I
it's
Yeah.
classical music. It's basically like early classical music videos, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, well, it worked out.
Yeah.
And there's like a badass. There's also a scene called Nine on
Dragon.
Bald Mountain. There's a badass like devil that like appears over this giant mountain
Not
and
my
like
house.
makes ghosts dance in the palm of his hands.
Wow, that's dark.
Yeah, it is actually. It's one of the darker moments in Disney animation. And
I
it's-
remember the early one. I mean, Dumbo and Pinocchio and all of them have these really dark dream sequences.
Oh yeah. It's funny because Disney was super religious Midwestern himself, brought up by like a Bible beating, salt of the earth father, and so he had sort of those values in quotation marks implanted in him. But then also he was obsessed with the macabre. Like there are lots of like, there's that dancing skeleton black and white short that he did. There's Night in Bald Mountain. There's some like really weird dark stuff that he was definitely into, which was really fascinating. Always fascinating.
There
He was a little out there.
There's a Christian. I think that's an easy way for the pendulum to swing with the Christian upbringing, because you spend so much time talking about evil, you spend so much time talking about life after death, you spend so much time talking about the impending apocalypse, that I think it is sort of it's rooted in you to obsess about it, but also to keep it at arm's length.
It's just for me, I feel like it's the perfect recipe for repression. Like I remember, because my upbringing was not that strict, but we definitely, we had to go to church every Sunday. And I remember as a child, and this was also like, oh, maybe you had some anxiety issues going on, but I remember laying awake in bed at night, and I apologize to our listeners, but no, but I just remember laying awake.
Masturbation.
No, I wish. No,
thank you. I'm glad you said it.
I wish. I mean, I think some people will take offense to what I'm about to say, but I remember as a kid, I was like, the worst thing I could think is the phrase "fuck you, God." You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, sure.
And then that would start playing in my head on loop.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it would be like, try not to think that. Right. And then you would think that. And then I would thinking that was going to be really bad for me. And it was going to mean that it was punishing. Then I'd be like, but God knows that I don't really mean this. And I would lay awake and just obsess over that, start crying. I couldn't sleep. Yeah. And it's just like, you know what? Just maybe this kid doesn't need to go to church. Maybe we can just teach him moral values, to respect and love his neighbors, and
it really cracks open the psyche. You become existential in a certain aspect. I know the feeling.
It caused a lot more problems for me than it brought comfort. I don't know, but do you still carry around any of that baggage? When did you kind of break out of that program?
I shed a lot of that guilt in my late 20s.
Really?
Yeah, it took me a while because we were a really strict household. My siblings are still pretty devout, and my older brother's raising his children in very much the same way that we were raised. And it's hard. It's hard because it seems like by saying that isn't what worked for me, that isn't what offered me comfort, that isn't what gave me a good moral structure, it seems inherently judgmental of the people for whom it does work, which I don't mean it to be. It seems like it does really work very well for my brother, and it seems like for he and his wife, that's how they'd like to raise their kids because it works so well for them.
Right.
But that lack of judgment doesn't go both ways, because they judge me very much for having left the whatever that is, that narrow path.
Wow.
That's wild.
That is wild. I mean, you've talked about it on the show too, about kind of
So my upbringing, is I got like both worlds. So my mom, like my parents were divorced when I was pretty young, and my mom was a Lutheran, which is like Catherine Light, but she was pretty devout and wanted us to go to church, and she definitely believes in God and the hierarchy and the Bible and all that stuff. Whereas my dad was, and I'd go to the summers and I would call it my deprogramming. He'd be like, all right, what are they teaching you in that school? And I'm like, this and that, and be like, and he would, because he was an atheist through and through, which is like its own religion in a sense, you know what I mean? Like they're very serious about there being
strict
nothing.
Boundaries there.
Narrow confines either way.
Yeah. So it really kind of tore my psyche apart, and just like you staying awake in bed at night, it really, I guess I've just always wanted to know what the truth is, or as close as I can come to it. So you really start to explore both sides, and then it really just cracks you open like an egg. You're like, well, maybe this is true, or maybe that's true, but
and it's asking you to have these really high-minded existential conversations
without
with yourself.
a doubt.
When you haven't even really figured out how to have the narrow social structure conversations with yourself. You're like
True.
dealing with these really abstract, high-minded notions.
I think I guess the thing that I find that must be for people who it really works for, and what I would wish in any type of religion that I would practice is that it it expands my universe, it expands my world, it expands my imagination, it expands my acceptance, because to me that's really the only model that I can understand of what a god or deity would be, is someone who really is truly enlightened, that's like loves creation, loves existence, loves the mystery of life, and it's
Right.
like, let's go on a kick-ass adventure into thinking about all this stuff and exploring.
Let me ask you this though: if
existence.
there's this deity that loves all, can't a deity love evil as well?
Oh, sure. I mean, or
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
I see what you're saying.
love in terms of like,
I guess what I'm getting at, because for isn't it the dark that shows us the light, and so it has to all kind of coexist together. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. I mean,
I know what you're saying though too. It's Joseph Campbell said it the best. While that may be true, the best thing that we can do is lean to the light.
Well, and also too, I think he also talked about how binary thinking is a real trap.
It is.
And it's a way to fall into literal thinking, which is there's good and bad. There's either or, there's black and white.
Well, this is like we're
Right.
talking about.
Right.
You have these sort of narrow blinders on because it does help for society. It helps people live in their lane.
right.
But in terms of all the information we're receiving from the world around us, it isn't just that. It
No,
couldn't
not at
be
all.
just
No.
that. How could it?
Right.
No, it's like to quote Linda Godfrey, our guest from last week, all this stuff kind of falls somewhere on a sliding scale,
Yeah.
And I think that we've fallen into a trap of looking at things as either or,
I couldn't agree more.
So I don't know, but it's fascinating.
Yeah.
What would you be open to in terms of what does capture your imagination about the paranormal?
There's nothing that scares me about it.
Okay.
I'm so open to it. I would welcome it. If I saw some ghost, I'd be like, "What's up, man? Tell me everything."
Right. Okay.
Right.
I wouldn't run. I wouldn't throw things. I wouldn't, That's why I think it is. I'm doing it as a bit, but I really am very, very open to it.
Right.
And it is extraordinarily disappointing that nothing has arisen.
even a static person at the foot
Yeah.
of your
Oh,
bed.
I'd love it.
Yeah.
I'd love
Oh, come on,
it.
sit
Like,
down.
what's going on, dude?
Static
Right.
man.
Am I
Right.
in your space?
Right.
If I am, I'm
Yeah.
happy to leave.
Yeah. Totally.
No, I used to sit, like you were saying, laying in bed thinking about just your sort of moral boundaries and then obsessing about it. I used to think and sort of obsess over what it must feel like to die and be able to have those questions answered.
Right.
From a really young age, thinking about death in a very comfortable way, which I think has affected me as an adult too, because death has never been this sort of looming, daunting horror at the
Wow.
end of a long tunnel. It's always been it seems like a welcome relief, actually.
Right.
Well, you're young.
No, I'm sure that'll come at some point. But it's also affected my way of dealing with death of loved ones, of people close to me, because it just never really seems particularly sad. I mean, I understand the impulse to miss having someone around, but I sort of envy them.
God, that makes me want to. A past guest, Joe Manganella, he Instagrammed
Manganello,
something.
sure.
God, I gotta
Good
read
job.
it. Let me see if I can find it. But it was a quote from the late great Stanley Kubrick, and it had very much to do with death. Oh, here it is. I'll read it right now. I don't know why this is a little off tangent, but
It's just a quote about filmmaking.
no, I think you'll like this. So Playboy asked, it was an interview from Playboy, and Playboy asks,
I also love that Joe posted something from Playboy. That
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
sure.
if
Sounds
life
right.
is so purposeless, do you feel that it's worth living? And Kubrick answers, yes. For those of us who manage somehow to cope with our mortality, the very meaninglessness of life forces man to create his own meaning. Children, of course, begin life with an untarnished sense of wonder, a capacity to experience total joy at something as simple as the greenness of a leaf. But as they grow older, the awareness of death and decay begins to impinge on their consciousness and subtly erode their joie de vivre, their idealism, and their assumption of immortality. As a child matures, he sees death and pain everywhere about him and begins to lose faith in the ultimate goodness of man. But if he's reasonably strong and lucky, he can emerge from this twilight of the soul into a rebirth of life's elan. Both because of and in spite of his awareness of the meaninglessness of life, he can forge a fresh sense of purpose and affirmation. He may not recapture the same pure sense of wonder he was born with, but he can shape something far more enduring and sustaining. The most terrifying fact about the universe is not that it is hostile, but that it is indifferent. But if we can come to terms with this indifference and accept the challenges of life within the boundaries of death, however mutable man may be able to make them, our existence as a species can have genuine meaning and fulfillment. However vast the darkness, we must supply our own light.
That was all on an Instagram post?
Boy, that was
Yeah.
a long quote.
It was. But
How do you squeeze all that?
You got to really zoom in.
it was a
It's a
tiny
very
read. It was a
fine
tiny
print.
read, but I think that was apropos about
No,
what we were talking about.
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, completely. And also brought up as well, to bring it full circle, the wonderment of being a small kid, and having your eyes open to everything that the spectrum has to.
Yeah.
Yes, before you've applied that constrictor.
Yeah.
Whatever that's called. I wish I knew the name of it.
Well, you know what? We'll call it David Hole constriction.
The constrictor.
Guys, I got a pee so bad. I'm so
All right,
sorry.
great. You know
No,
what? It's
yeah, take
perfect
a
time
break.
to take a break. When we come back, we'll play a little game with you, and then we'll move on to this week's Tale of High Strangeness.
Sweet.
And we're back with David Hall,
Yes, good afternoon.
star of
I guess I don't know when they're listening.
almost at HBO's Hulu's new show, The Body. Which
Are
is-
you the body, David?
I'm
or-
not.
Okay.
I am not, although my mother thought that I was, as if I had asked her to watch something I had done where I played just a dead corpse that gets dragged around. That's the premise of the
Gotcha.
movie, is that a dead corpse gets dragged around for 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yeah. But it's Halloween, so everyone just thinks it's a prop.
Oh, interesting.
And so she was like, I didn't realize you had such a big part.
Oh. I was thinking like body, like Jesse the Body Ventura.
Oh, no.
Somebody who's in great shape.
No,
'cause
no. Nor
David's
was
in
I that
excellent
body.
shape. Gotcha. Okay.
I was neither body.
Gotcha.
That is hilarious. Well, we can't see your face, but you're so good in this. You are a major character.
The titular character.
You are
Oh, my God.
integral to the plot. All right, so this is a game we call Bullshit or Believe It. It's rapid fire.
Can't wait.
I'm going to list the things
Bullshit.
that you may. Bullshit. Great. So you say
got
bullshit
it.
or believe
He
it.
gets the concept.
Yeah.
Got it?
Bullshit.
On your mark.
Mm-hmm.
Get set. Ghosts.
Bullshit.
Ghosts.
Oh, believe it.
UFOs.
Believe it.
Bigfoot.
Bullshit.
Angels.
Bullshit.
Gnomes.
Bullshit.
Fairies.
Bullshit.
Unicorns.
Bullshit.
Loch Ness Monster.
Believe it.
Alien Greys.
Believe it.
Parallel universes.
Believe it.
Reptilians disguising themselves as humans.
Bullshit.
Mermaids.
Bullshit.
Heaven.
Bullshit.
Hell.
Bullshit.
Dogmen.
Hadn't really thought about it. Instinct is bullshit.
It would
Go
be.
with your gut.
And then wait till you hear about Dogmen. Yeti.
Bullshit.
Elves.
Bullshit.
ESP.
Believe it.
Chupacabra.
Bullshit.
Demons.
Bullshit.
Atlantis.
Like the
Lost continent of Atlantis.
from mythology.
Yeah.
Oh God, I don't know. I don't know it that well. I'm gonna go bullshit.
Time travel.
Oh God, isn't that just a construct of the mind? I don't know. I believe it. I mean, I believe that there's a way to do that.
Life on other planets.
You're not asking me to expand on these.
We'll come back.
As you said, rapid fire. I have more to say.
We'll come back. Life on other planets.
Sure. Yeah, believe it.
Life after death.
Bullshit.
Okay. Whoa. All right.
That was
cool.
I was surprised.
I got some questions in here.
Well, my life after death bullshit is more like life as we know it after death. If
Yeah.
you know what I
Right.
mean. Like, does my spirit in my form go somewhere and continue
David
to
Hole
live
Does your
on?
personality
Chilling,
survive?
yeah.
No, but I believe in energetic transfer, and I believe that our energy and our matter
cannot be created or destroyed.
That's right. So we must exist in some capacity.
Great.
Awesome.
Well,
I liked your answers. I was glad to hear you had some belief in some of those there.
Atlantis. Atlantis.
pretty straight
I
bullshit.
guess I feel better about myself.
Yeah, Atlantis struggled with a little bit.
Because I'm a mermaid man.
I know. I'm a mermaid man. That's another T-shirt. I'm a mermaid man.
Yeah, I just
Self-mermaid man.
Self-made mermaid man.
I'm not familiar enough with the mythological tale of Atlantis. Aside from that, it's a lost continent.
Yeah, it was mentioned in Plato's writing, and where else? The famous sleeping prophet Edgar Cayce described the lost city of Atlantis. And as the story goes, it was kind of like it was destroyed. Their technology overpowered their civilization, and they were thrust into a cataclysmic deluge.
Kind of like Noah's flood times like 1,000.
Right.
But as if like super advanced civilization had
totally
brought upon their own destruction.
Yeah,
I see.
And a few of the high priests managed to escape, and from there came up to the deserts of where's Egypt? Yeah, is that Africa? I was going to say that sounded wrong though. But anyway, and created the mystery schools of the Atlantean mystery schools, where some of the Egyptian high priests became initiated, and on it goes.
And so there is an underwater land somewhere.
Yeah. There's
not with mermen necessarily.
No, not
but right. But yes,
not
I
alive.
Think that you
underneath
could
the
find...
underneath the Atlantic or something like that, you would be able to find remnants of the ancient city.
I guess I have no real reason to disbelieve that.
But they found remnants of, who knows if it's in the Atlantic too. I mean, there's all kinds of underwater mega structures too. Like, what's the one in Japan?
Well, the sea levels have risen.
Yonaguni or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Graham Hancock has done a whole new book on underwater structures and monuments.
I have a follow-up question about their technological advancements that then wreaked havoc on themselves. How did that include sea level?
Well, it was some say it was a volcanic eruption that
sunk them.
That sunk them. Yeah, the entire city was
an explosion,
or a meteor or something like that.
Yeah, well, that certainly could have happened.
Yeah, I mean, who knows?
Or some sort of.
But it was a water city.
Weapon
it was like,
of mass destruction.
Totally.
But two high priests escaped.
Like a lot of
several high priests
until two wacky high priests taught them how to dance.
That's fall on CBS.
That's the really condensed, sloppy version. But yes.
All right.
Yeah, I have a second follow-up question. Does that story have a moral implication? Is there a reason for that story having been told?
Oh, it's a great question. I don't know. I think what comes to mind is one has to be aware of how fast technology progresses when our spirituality lags behind,
Or that, a warning to civilizations of like, civilizations rise and they fall. Nothing is forever.
The reason I ask is because a lot of tales with a moral compass reading have existed through so many societies because they're relevant stories that teach relevant lessons, and then over time become these more literal products of people's imaginations.
Yeah.
So they become less figurative stories that teach lessons and more precise literal things that may have actually happened.
Right. It's interesting to think about. I know in Plato's writing, he took it as literal fact that that there was this civilization and that this city existed.
How long before Plato was this supposed to have happened?
Even thousands of years
before.
Yeah. We'll look into it.
I have some research to do.
Yeah, we do too. Okay, we're going to take a very brief break, and when we come back, it's time for High Strangeness. Okay, guys, this story is one that I chose because it not only embraces everything we enjoy on this program, but also because it's a little badass and it's appropriately Halloween-y. maybe one of the more far-fetched cryptids we've ever examined here on the show, but it's included in Linda Godfrey's book American Monsters, which is what inspired me to pick it this week. This is the story of Batsquatch.
Yeah.
Batsquatch. Believe it. Oh, wait, yeah.
On May 18th, 1980, Mount St. Helens erupted, rocking the state of Washington in the largest volcanic event in U.S. history. The explosion shot 80,000 feet into the air, shaved off a side of the volcano, and caused the largest landslide in recorded history. In addition to killing 57 people and thousands of animals and spreading ash across 11 states, the eruption may have kicked the door wide open to something unearthly. A giant, flying hominid that would come to be known to locals as the Batsquatch. Legend tells, and I want to emphasize the word legend here because I could find no eyewitness accounts of this specific cryptid before 1990. But according to local legend, folks started witnessing a strange, hulking creature with leathery type bat wings flying around Washington state not too long after the eruption. Now, our listeners know that this isn't the first time a shadowy winged creature would be linked to a local disaster.
Sure.
I'm speaking, of course, of the Mothman, who was spotted in Point Pleasant, West Virginia around the time that the Silver Bridge collapsed on December 15th, 1967, leading to the deaths of 46 people.
Also a hulking creature with large muscles.
Hung out around an old TNT plant.
Must go to the same gym.
But the creature ruling the skies of Washington state was no moth, and it definitely was no man.
Hell yeah.
If legends are true, and this monster was indeed seen in passing glances by locals beginning after the eruption of Mount St. Helens, no one would get a real good look at it until 1994. Dang. And that unlucky witness was a teenager by the name of Brian Canfield. On April 16th, 1994, Saturday night, Brian was driving in his pickup to his home in the rural community of Camp 1 near Mount Rainier, Washington. Now, that name, Mount Rainier, should set off a few bells for our listeners who remember our Kenneth Arnold story from a few weeks back.
Sure.
One of the very first modern flying saucer witness accounts happened over Mount Rainier, Washington. So this is an area of the country that has a lot of paranormal activity.
This is Mount St. Helens.
Well,
the
eruption was Mount St. Helens. This story takes place near Mount Rainier, which is in Washington State.
How long after Mount St. Helens eruption
14
are we
years.
now? Okay.
14 years.
That was in 1980.
But if you look now about the Batsquatch, they say that people had been seeing something like this since 1980. Now, where these eyewitness accounts are, I don't know.
But Brian Canfield.
But we got Brian Canfield's, and we're going to get into that.
Okay.
So, according to an article written by C.R. Roberts from the Tacoma News Tribune, published a week after this event, David was driving along. Oh, sorry, Brian. I think I wrote David because I was thinking of David Hull.
Let's use David as the witness.
David, you can play Brian in this scenario.
Oh my God,
Everyone
what an
think of
honor.
David.
Thank you.
Brian was driving along a forested road when his pickup engine cut out and the vehicle came to a complete and sudden stop in the middle of the road. Quote, between the edge of the forest and a clear-cut, scrubby field. That's from the report from the News Tribune. Assuming it was the result of a bad carburetor that had been bugging him all that week,
Dang thing.
Brian was about to get out and take a look at the engine when something truly batshit crazy happened. Descending straight into the spotlight of his truck headlamps came a large, winged creature. The monster landed with a whomp 30 feet from Brian's truck and turned towards the kid, who was white-knuckling the steering wheel of his dead truck as he gawked at the inhuman oddity. As the monster folded its wings back and turned away from the truck, Brian started to get a good look at what he was facing. The monster was 9 feet tall, with blue fur, yellow eyes. I have a little helper here by the name of Nova, who just cleared my computer screen. He was 9 feet tall, blue fur, yellow eyes, tufted ears, broad shoulders, and a muscled human-like torso with clawed feet. Brian told the reporter this: "It was standing there, staring at me like it was resting, like it didn't know what to think. I was scared. I felt the hair raise on me. I didn't feel threatened. I just felt out of place." He went on. Its eyes were yellow and shaped like a piece of pie with half moons for pupils. The mouth was pretty big, white teeth, no fangs, but the face was like a wolf. After several otherworldly minutes, Brian said the creature looked back at me and started flapping its wings. The wingspan, he said, was easily the width of the road. The monster lifted back into the air slowly, rocking the truck back and forth in its wake. And then the monster disappeared into the night sky. According to his interview with the News Tribune, Brian's truck suddenly started working again. He sped home, woke his parents, and told them what had happened. Both parents vouched for their son, saying that his hair was, quote, still standing on end when he told them the story. Brian's mom made him draw a picture of the creature, and the family grabbed a neighbor who was familiar with the woods and a shotgun and headed back to the spot where Brian had seen the creature.
Those are some pretty believable parents. You gotta love them for that.
Yeah, they totally. I mean, you can go find the original article is out there. You can read it, and they were 100% supportive of their son.
Love that.
Here's a gun.
Yeah, let's get the gun. Actually, he told his dad, "We got to get the shotgun. There's something out there." But of course, the monster did not make a return appearance that night. Brian went to school the next day and started sharing his exciting story. And of course, he got made fun of a lot, but also he had a few close buddies that believed him. And that's when Brian coined the name Batsquatch to describe this hulking beast with wings.
I see what he did.
Mm-hmm.
About the size of a
half
Bigfoot.
Sasquatch.
I see.
You put them together.
I see,
It's
Brian.
not too shabby if I say so myself.
Okay, Brian.
And the C.R. Roberts, the reporter, he believed him as well in the article. He said, this kid really seemed to believe that he saw what he saw. And this also took place on the heels of the late 80s and early 90s satanic panic that was taking place, where communities, and especially Christian communities, were becoming very scared of the influence of heavy metal and Dungeons and Dragons. This is around the time of the West Memphis 3 case and the murders that happened in, I think it was Arkansas, where goth kids and kids that listen to heavy metal were being accused of falling under the powers of Satan. And so it's funny because in this article you can read C.R. Roberts was like, Brian's a good kid. He doesn't drink. He doesn't listen to heavy metal.
Right.
He doesn't play Dungeons and Dragons. He's not into drugs.
This is not Satan latching his claws.
Yeah, this
into
isn't a satanic influence here. This is a kid who is otherwise just a good student and a nice kid, and he encountered something that he could not explain.
Super ripped.
Super jacked.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Hot Squatch.
Well, and it's funny because this comes back years later in 2009. And this is according to both the Mysterious Universe website and Linda Godfrey's book, American Monsters. 2 men were hiking on Mount Shasta in Northern California, not too far south from Mount St. Helens and Washington State, when they saw something emerge from a cavern in the mountainside and take off into the sky. This creature was covered in dark fur, and the men said with the body of Hulk Hogan.
Okay.
Very specific.
It's pretty awesome.
brother.
With the head of a bat
Mm-hmm.
and a wingspan of an estimated, get ready for this, 50 feet.
Okay. All right.
This Batsquatch-like entity paid the two friends no heed. It just simply disappeared into the sky, off to hunt whatever it was after. Now, there are reports of other giant man-bat creatures in Texas, in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, Missouri, and even Chicago, where over the past year or two, people have been seeing a dark, winged, man-like bat creature that some were calling the Mothman of Chicago. We've talked about some of those encounters on this very show.
Yeah, that's a great whole thing.
One of the most recent ones that we talked about took place in, I think, southern Wisconsin. A truck driver saw one of these creatures on the side of the road, look up at him, and then fly off into the sky.
No way. Also super hot.
Super ripped.
More like Randy Macho Man Savage than a
Yeah.
Hulk.
I mean, they were pretty, still fuckable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether legend or real, Brian Canfield definitely saw something that night. And while it may not be easily defined or explained, as we've learned again and again on this podcast, it may not be wise to discount it completely. And that is the origin of the Batsquatch.
Batsquatch. Stone Cold Steve Austin was underrepresented in the Batsquatch.
I know, he really was.
You know that Stone Cold Steve Austin would pay to fight the Batsquatch.
I'd fight it.
He's like, I will pay anyone who can put me in a ring with a Batsquatch.
I like all these grown men describing this
I know.
very muscular.
I know.
I couldn't tear my eyes
Jim,
away from it.
Jim, you see what I saw? Hulk Hogan with a bat head and 50-foot wings? God damn, that's what I was
Holy
thinking.
shit.
Yeah, it is. There is a sort of undertone of homoeroticism
Yeah.
and rampant masculinity in some of these stories. you know?
Listen, they have to describe the musculature somehow. Obviously, the thing was ripped.
Listen,
you
he
know?
was jacked.
Yeah,
He
jacked.
was
What are you
Jack
going to do?
motherfucker.
How'd he get so jacked?
Yeah.
No one knows.
We don't know.
Flapping them 50-foot wings, that's how.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That takes pectoral muscles.
Dave, I got to ask you, what the hell was that?
That's hard to say.
What do you think of these stories?
It's strange that so many people, like we were saying on the break, it's strange that so many people tell parallel lanes, similar stories, that so many people can have an encounter not having any understanding of anyone else who's had this encounter and describe it almost the same way. That's sort of hard to come to terms with if you're a skeptic.
What I find really interesting about this story too, is, and we kind of skimmed over it, or I did, is that Brian insisted that the fur was blue, was like a
Yeah.
soft, bright blue, which immediately makes me think of the Beast from X-Men or
Sure,
something, which was a cartoon that was popular at that time.
Also super hot.
Also super
Yeah.
jacked, super hot. But he stood by that. Now, some people think it might have been the way that the headlights reflected off the fur, but I guess he was interviewed by NBC, a local NBC affiliate, and he compared the color of the fur to that of the NBC peacock, the blue peacock. So he kind of was like, it was bright blue, this thing, which is a really fascinating because
None of those other encounters
Yeah, like
reference
sat-
a blue being.
Well, they say, yeah, I think there's another encounter of someone who supposedly saw the creature, but it seems to be universally decided that it's a hoax, so I didn't include it.
Okay.
But you can
Also
go
in the same area?
in the same area. It was a hunter who was out one night in the woods, and the story sounded very similar to Brian Canfield's. He encountered a giant blue winged creature that was like half man, half bat, kind of with a wolf face. But I guess people had done some research into this guy's story, and they were like, we don't really buy it.
But he fucked with Brian's truck.
Yeah, maybe. So that's the other weird thing
Which
because
is something. The other ones don't tell a violent, antagonistic story.
And that is very common with a lot of paranormal encounters, including UFO encounters, where the machines just suddenly stop working. Now, the lights didn't go out. The headlights were still working, but the engine stopped.
Didn't it say he jumped on it and shook it?
Well, no. When the creature took back off, the turbulence of the
I
wings
see.
rocked the truck back and forth.
I got you.
And when he landed, it was like a big loud whoomph and like kicking a bunch of dust up into the air. But it's a weird one. I don't know. What do you make of this, Bryce? Had you heard of the Batsquatch before?
I haven't heard of the Batsquatch. It's trying to be open-minded here.
Sure.
No, listen, I think of like stuff like the Thunderbirds, these giant winged creatures that people spot. I don't know. It's almost like there's a dimension that exists that houses all kinds of uncanny creatures, whether that's in the mind of the beholder that helps crystallize these beings into life. I have no idea, but there seems to be a whole array of winged creatures now. You almost like. I mean, maybe it's his interpretation. I think of the Mothman, honestly. Like, I mean,
I say sometimes, like, if it enters into the lexicon and you can kind of subconsciously creep into your brain without you even acknowledging, and you see something that looks like something, and you reference whatever you have in the catalog of your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Are you asking me if I think it was a Sasquatch with wings? Probably not. I don't know.
No, I don't think it is a Sasquatch. And in fact, it doesn't really describe him as being a Bigfoot. I think this was a teenage kid coming up with like...
Trying to coin a cool name.
Trying to come up with a cool name for it. I don't think it's related.
It's misleading.
I
That's
think
all
it's
I'll
probably,
say. It's misleading.
I think it
roll right off the tongue.
It does.
Well done.
I think it's probably more in line with some of the dogmen-like creatures that have been seen in Wisconsin and Illinois, or the Mothman. I think it has more in common with that. This to me feels interdimensional. This feels to me, going back to that idea of does it take the user to help manifest what this thing looks like? We've brought it up on the show before, but like it is all about a glamour, something that is a supernatural being that will look one way to one person and another way to another person, depending on what the witness finds frightening or what and that came up. There was I think that was in Harry Potter as well. That wasn't it. There was something in a cabinet that the kids had to face in the dark arts class, and
it's whatever your worst fear.
Whatever
is.
your worst fear is, it takes that on. So I think there might be some type of interdimensional or paranormal logic at play here that could be that. I don't know. It's a slippery slope because once you start accepting, and I understand this is why a lot of cryptozoologists are like, nope, Bigfoot is a primate. We're not getting into interdimensional or paranormal shit. It's just an ape in the woods that we have not been able to capture and categorize yet. I get that because sometimes you have to draw the line. I used to draw the line at dogmen. There's no such thing. And then you read these stories and you're like, okay, well, I still don't know if there's such thing as the dogman.
Yeah.
But these stories are compelling, and these people seem to believe that they saw what they saw just as much as someone who witnessed a UFO in the sky that I tend to lend more credit to.
Yeah, that's true. That's not fair.
It's a slippery slope. So
we are on a train that has left the station, my friend.
No shit, dude.
tell
We're
ya.
fucked. But it's scary because it's like, where do we draw the line? And that's why I keep going back to, well, maybe there's a sliding scale of paranormal entities that we talked about on last week's show. And some of them are Bigfoot, some of them are wolfmen, some of them are wolfmen with wings, some of them are Batmans, some of them are Mothmans. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's all bullshit. I don't know, but it doesn't seem like it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Did you read those accounts from the other parts of the country?
I did, yeah. And some of them look more like a 5 to 6 foot bat.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Just a huge bat.
Like a huge bat, or ones that look more like the literal the villain man bat from Batman. If you ever watched Batman the animated series, it was like they kind of look more like that, like a more vampiric bat like creature. So they're not even similar to this thing that this guy that Brian Canfield saw, because this one he said had a bit more of a wolf like appearance, but didn't have fangs. It's insane. This stuff is crazy, and Mothman's supposed to have red eyes.
I know. I'm imagining this very nice human teeth, just a nice
Right.
great mouthful
dental
of teeth. No fangs.
Yeah, beautiful
you're saying.
smile. Beautiful smile.
I'm gonna pull up a picture of this for you guys, but
What? There's a picture?
well, the drawing.
No,
An interpretation.
I know what you're saying. It's like for me, like the UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena thing, and aliens are much more grounded in just the plethora of witnesses and testimony and
Right.
and even videographic and photographic evidence,
Right.
and as well as like Bigfoot or Sasquatch, just the amount of eyewitness testimony and the physical trace evidence left behind, whether it's in trackways or hair samples or whatever. And then you're right. You get into these, kind of one-offs, as I might call it, because, you got this one witness who sees something like you're showing
This
me
is
now.
the drawing that Brian Canfield did. We'll put this up on the Instagram.
Although that looks like an Anunnaki serpent god. So
Pretty cool.
maybe there's something to that.
It could have just been that.
Yeah.
David said he does not want to see that.
Yeah. No, that's
It
weird.
almost has a head like a bobcat
Yeah,
in this drawing.
it's a strangely small head.
And the wings are on his shoulder blades, not attached to his arms. You
Yeah.
know? 9 feet tall, with claws, blue tinted fur, yellowish eyes, sharp. Well, now it says sharp teeth and tufted ears, but I don't know. Pretty.
Well, I'm not going to be the guy that calls
Maybe
him a
he
liar.
said it doesn't have fangs. Like, here's another artist interpretation.
The other thing is, these aren't stories, told. When you mentioned Chupacabra earlier, I feel like I've always heard that one mentioned
Yeah.
with like a sort of scary, looming ghost story kind of vibe.
Right.
These are just encounters. It's not like someone saying, "Watch out for this thing; it lurks in the woods."
Totally.
Right.
It's gonna come grab you out of the dead of night. It's
Right.
just, I saw this thing.
Came
what
out of nowhere.
happened? Yeah.
Yeah, and they talk about I'm reading that The Life and Times of Bigfoot book, which is written from a very skeptical point of view. It's authors, I think, Jason Blubus. Might be getting that wrong off the top of my head, but he talks about in the turn of the century how these encounters with Yeti and Sasquatch, especially in the Himalayas, when Yeti became popularized by explorers hiking Mount Everest and started hearing local stories of like yak herders and this entity that they would see. He said that there was something that sort of happened, and David, you're totally onto something, where up until the turn of the 20th century, a lot of these stories of boogeymen and stuff had much more of a ghost story narrative. And what made the Yeti and Sasquatch and a lot of these stories we're now hearing, the Beast of Bray Road stuff in the 20th and now 21st century sound so convincing, is they are sort of these innocuous, like just encounters that seem to, this thing crosses the road and you see it, or
Right.
you catch a glimpse of it.
It didn't threaten
It's
me.
not-
It didn't try
yeah,
and
it's-
hurt me.
It's
it
not
was-
haunting your house. I mean, we
Right.
still have obviously
Sure, yeah.
stories of ghosts that haunt and stuff like that, or UFO abductions that are a little bit more involved. But a lot of these Sasquatch, it's like catching the glimpse of an animal in the wild,
Right.
and that's it. And that adds to the believability of the story, whether true or not. But that was sort of a new phenomena in folklore. These stories of like, I just happened to see this thing pass by.
I feel a little ashamed because when we were playing Believe It or Bullshit, every land dwelling figure that you mentioned, like Bigfoot, Chupacabra, Yeti, I called bullshit. The Loch Ness Monster,
You're an air guy.
I called Believe It. because I think the deep of the sea is so wildly unknown. I can imagine something existing down there that, I mean, of course, there are billions of things that exist down there that we've never even imagined. And it seems less possible that would happen on land, but there's so much uninhabited land. Of course, things could exist without us seeing them.
Especially still here on the West Coast. And, we really only populated the West Coast and California. I mean, within the last 200 years.
Yeah, centuries. 2 centuries.
And if you go down the rabbit hole that we've been going down, some of these entities might slip into other dimensions, which makes them even harder to find.
Exactly.
Yeah, I forget the guy who said, I believe he was like a French astronomer, but he's quoted as saying, the universe isn't stranger than you can imagine. The universe is stranger than you can imagine.
Right.
We live in a strange place, and so when you get these kind of creatures that people come across, it doesn't surprise me that it's blue with nice teeth.
Right. You
yellow
imagine
eyes.
things in the image of your narrative of how you perceive things, and
Sure.
of course things can exist in a way that you can't even
Totally
And
shock
I don't
and
think this
surprise
thing
us.
came out of that volcano, but I like that culturally folklore is, this really bad thing
Catastrophic
happened,
event.
and as a result,
Yeah,
it
the
gave
bridge
birth
falling.
to this monster.
I did some research into some bodies of Bigfoot being discovered after that Mount Shasta explosion.
Oh yeah,
because-
that's a hoax.
Well,
No, it is.
well, now
That's
wait a
where
minute,
I
Mike.
draw the
Moving
line.
on.
I think they prove that. I think that story's a proven hoax. We could go on Snopes and it'd be like, no.
No, yeah, totally. But there's some interesting story elements to it. I mean,
Yeah.
and a quarter of a mountain was blown off the face of the earth. Of course,
Yeah.
if there's going to be Bigfoots
Mount
up
St.
there,
Helens.
maybe.
Yeah, but I know that story, but then it was like the guy who was behind that was proven that he was lying.
Okay,
Idiot.
I'm not
Well,
familiar
we can
with
look
that.
it up.
All
But
right,
yeah, that
I'll
was
check it out.
because I wanted, and then it was like, oh no, everybody says this is bullshit. So
Well, it's good to have standards,
I guess
draw the line
We can
somewhere.
Got to
Michael.
draw the line somewhere.
we can certainly tell the story, but then if we do, we gotta unpack. The
Listen, I only
hoaxery.
came across it on a YouTube thing. I found it interesting.
Well, there you
so
go.
There you go.
I mean, there's so many hoaxers that have said they've found Bigfoot bodies, and they've all been proven.
Oh yeah, no, I
liars.
know that. Yeah.
Anywho, David, thank you so much for coming on the show. I
Thank
hope
you
you
for
had a
having
good
me.
pleasure.
time.
Oh my
I
God.
had a blast.
I hope
Awesome.
you'll think about the universe a little differently once you exit the clubhouse.
Or
today.
mermaids. If you
Yeah.
could just rethink mermaids.
Yeah,
a
Yeah,
little
you
bit.
guys are hung up on the mermaid
would,
The
thing.
ocean is vast.
I
and
don't-
mysterious.
I don't
busting
have
that.
any reason to disbelieve it. You asked me, gun to my head.
Yeah.
What do you say?
David, where can people find you should you wish to be found?
Oh, what do you mean?
Like social media?
Oh, yeah. I'm on Instagram. David Hall, just my name twice.
And what can we expect from your character White Josh this season on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, premiering October 12th on the CW?
Yeah. More of the same. A lot
Great.
more of sardonic, quippy one-liners
All right, great.
from our boy White Joe.
Right. I will tease that we have our first scene together ever.
That's true.
Maybe 2. I think we're in 2 scenes this year.
What do you mean? One we haven't shot yet? Or did we shoot 2?
We'll talk off mic. There's one I think we forgot about.
Oh.
There's one that I really. It's weird that my character's there, but
Well, there's one that's weird that your character's there. That it's even weirder that my character's not there.
oh, that's the one I'm thinking of. You should have been there and I'm not, but oh well. That's the way it goes.
Played
And
your
then,
cards right that week, my friend.
I think it has more to do with budget than anything else. I'm sure. Anyway, and then the body.
The Body. It came out last week on Hulu. It's there for the watching.
Is it
whenever
all? Is all of it out?
It's an anthology series, so it's just each chapter is self-contained.
Okay,
so I'm just in the
awesome.
first. They're releasing one a month.
There you go.
For the first Friday of every month. The Year of Fear, they're calling it.
Cool.
Horror movies, feature-length horror movie, one a month that deals with the corresponding holiday.
Oh,
Awesome.
cool.
So
Oh,
ours
nice.
is
great.
about Halloween. The next one will be about Thanksgiving, and so on and so forth.
Are they all called The Body?
No, The Body is the first installment. The whole series is called Into the Dark.
Okay.
Love
makes
that.
sense.
Cool.
Got it. I just blew out the mic on that one. All right. Riley, anything to plug coming up?
I just want to plug that phone number one more time.
Hell yeah, get that phone number out there.
Hell yeah, bro.
597-4803.
Leave us a message. We'll play it on the
Yeah,
air.
if you see something strange, give us a holler.
Bryce,
Hell
anything?
Yeah, as you heard, we shared with you one of our listener files, so please feel free to write into our Gmail account, bigfootcollectorsclub@gmail.com. Tell us your supernatural stories, and perhaps we might share them on one of our podcasts.
Make
Great.
up for guests who have none.
Yes.
And have no business being on this podcast.
No, hey, they're coming.
I want to thank Jared for plugging my new comic book adventure van, available now. You can get what issues 1 and 2 are already out. Issue 3 will be out around the time this drops, and then issues 4 and 5 come in November and December.
Nice.
Go buy Golden Apple Books. Go tell your local comic shop to order it, please, or get it on the Comixology app. Okay, guys, that's it for this week. We'll be back again next week with more tales of high strangeness and amazing personal paranormal histories. We love you guys. David, you want to send us out?